Hey everyone, this is Tony from TNC Travel, and this is actually the third stop on our 2017 Epic Europe trip, where we were lucky enough to visit 6 cities in 5 countries. And look, Venice is an absolutely stunning city, and Italy in general is a stunning country. This was a cool stop along the trip, and I've got a really funny story. We actually got dropped off in the water taxi in front of the hotel right here where you see it in the video footage, and we get to the hotel and it's pitch black. There's nobody working the counter. The lights are all turned off. We're kind of freaking out because at this point it's 2 in the morning and we can't get a hold of anyone. So I'm frantically calling 1-800-hotels.com or what have you, and Christine is trying to figure out what's going on. We turn and we see this right here. This, folks, is the doorbell that finally got the hotel employees' attention to come and open the door for us. So I'll be honest, we were freaking out for just a minute. What's also funny now is we almost booked another hotel for the same night just because we couldn't get a hold of anybody. So obviously in reflection, it's all really funny, but in that moment when it's 2 in the morning and you're trying to figure it out, nothing is really all that funny. You're just trying to get your stuff there and get some rest after a long day of travel. And as you can see in the footage here, to start the day, we did a free walking tour. I can't recommend that everywhere we go, but for this specific city, we loved it. And we still talk about this tour till now and how great the tour guide was. Free walking tour. You don't pay anything up front. You reserve your day and time, and then you just pay the tour guide with a tip at the end. Generally $5 to $20 per person, depending on how good they were. And in this instance, they were really, really good. We got to see a huge chunk of the city and all the sites, and he taught us a lot of the history. He's actually an American who moved to study abroad and then ended up just staying there. So I can definitely recommend the free tours in certain cities, but not everywhere that we've gone we've enjoyed them. And in this video here, you can see the locals working on their gondolas. Now, Christine and I made a conscious decision. We were not going to take a gondola ride. We still don't regret that decision. We just felt it was very touristy, and some of that charm is just lost on us, to be honest with you.
2 things. I'll tell you about 2 decades. First, what is this? Stuff building. That used to be a factory where they were producing textiles and things like this. Nowadays, it's owned by somebody that you all know. Her name is Paris Hilton.
A fun thing for me in making these videos is just reliving these trips, and I think at the time I underappreciated Venice. I remember leaving there and telling Christine that it was my least favorite of the 6 cities that we visited. And now in reflection, it was really special, and it's very different than anywhere else in the world. And these videos give me an opportunity to relive that. This is us looking at the markets and learning about the churches and just kind of living amongst the people for just a brief moment. And it's a pretty memorable thing to be able to go back and look at these videos. Okay, so these walking tours are notorious for basically dropping you off at a gift shop or a restaurant that they've partnered with and saying, here, why don't we take a break? Whoever wants to shop can shop, and whoever wants to eat can eat. Now, this is one of the rare instances where we actually enjoyed the restaurant where they dropped us off. A lot of other cities, we're not a big fan of where they drop us off at their partner restaurants. So you'll see some footage here in a second of the restaurant. It's hot, huh? Is it delicious? This is. How many plates are we in right now?
Just 2. But we're not going to say how many are.
2 plates, and we're not going to say how many we ordered. And we're in Venice, and it is a really beautiful day. We're in a big square. Christine's done listening to me. There's so many aspects of Venice that make it as unique as it is, but one of the major ones are these tiny, narrow walkways, and there's so many surprises around every turn and every corner. The tour guide was really great. I mean, he was explaining to us why the streets were as narrow as they were. He was explaining to us high tide and low tide and how it affects the city, what those canals are really for, and the logistical purpose of them now versus the original intent. It was a really cool tour, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, but it's not always the case, and that's why when you do get a really talented tour guide like we did here, and I'll find the organization that we took this tour through, and I'll put it in the description below. It really is an added gem to the trips that we take when we get a really knowledgeable tour guide. To me, they're the most underappreciated aspect of travel and leisure. And this young man, his name is Sean, he was no exception.
No longer the old Venice.
No cars in the whole city. It's crazy.
One of the very, very many weird things that we look at and observe when we travel are like windows and doors. And this is just a random alleyway that we took on our tour. And, you know, Christine was fixated on these windows and doors and how unique they are. And it's pretty cool. Every single building is just a little bit different. You don't get any of that model cookie cutter type buildings and houses like we do here in the States, especially in really densely populated major cities. So in this footage here, you can enjoy the waters of Venice. It's kind of interesting. There's only one major company for sort of what they call the metro. It's a boat system that goes up and down the major canals. And then they obviously have taxis. I got turned around a couple times on this, more because there's a lot of independent private companies that are taking tourists all over the place that just look exactly the same as the metro one. And so I would just say heads up, be cautious, know exactly which boat you're buying a ticket for, and get on the right one when you're touring these canals. And I only show it here for a brief second, but that's the Rialto Bridge, the famous Rialto Bridge in Venice. One aspect of Venice that you're just not going to see in these videos is the food. I didn't do a good job of documenting the food that we had there. Now, obviously this is Italy and pasta is king, but there's a lot of really interesting and creative food that you can find throughout Venice. Because of how easy it is to walk the city and there's no cars, you could find hidden gems everywhere. I would say it's the equivalent of trying to find a mom and pop restaurant in your local city versus a big food chain. You're not going to find major food chains in Venice, and it's a good thing. It helps, you know, creative chefs and sous chefs and everybody that's involved in the food industry kind of put their creative thinking caps on and try new things. And it is tourist heavy, don't get me wrong. There's just not nearly as many locals as there used to be 30 or 40 years ago. But with the tourism comes really good food, and there are some tourist traps you have to avoid, but overall the food was fantastic in Venice. This is a pretty cool sculpture here that's pretty iconic, and then there's that bird just kind of sitting there right in front of the monument. So I'm not sure who the artist is that created this, but it's like the hands of Poseidon coming up from the water up against the building. Pretty cool. So as you watch this video, I'll tell you a quick story. We had a nightmare time getting to Venice. You'll have to watch the Paris video for that. We finally get to Venice, and it's the middle of the night, and we need to get our stuff onto the water taxi to get us close to the hotel. Well, we didn't quite know exactly what stop it was. My phone's about to die. It's pitch black out on the water. It's me, Christine, the captain and his sidekick, and another couple. That's it on the entire water taxi. So we don't even know where we're going to get off. And then finally, Christine just approached the captain's sidekick. I don't know what it's called. I'm sorry. I don't know what the position's called, but asks him in English if we're about to get off on the wrong stop. Thankfully, he told us, no, don't get off here. Wait until we get closer and we can put you right at the hotel. And luckily she talked to him, because if she didn't, you guys, we were going to walk upwards of 1.5 miles in the dark in Venice. And you'll have to watch the London video when I highly recommend not checking a bag and just living out of a carry-on. So visualize me and Christine in the middle of the night in Venice, lugging around a huge check bag. Thankfully, that guy on the boat helped us out. And here is probably the most iconic location in Venice, Italy. This is the St. Mark's Square, adjacent to the St. Mark's Basilica. And this is where we hung out. We were only in Venice for 2 days, but both days we hung out in this square. And people watch, and there are restaurants. I would definitely categorize the restaurants as tourist traps. Very generic menus, very high prices, but the trade-off is you get to sit in the most populated square in the city and just kind of hang out. There are a lot of street vendors here trying to sell you tchotchkes and junk you don't need. They're harmless. They're just trying to make a living. But this is the city center for all intents and purposes, and it's pretty cool to just hang out. This is just a fun video of Christine trying to get the pigeons to cooperate, and they're not. But while this is playing, I'll just tell you, we really didn't book any sort of official excursions. I've already mentioned the free walking tour, but that was about it. There was no prepaid or pre-organized excursions for us in Venice, and I think I would prefer it that way. I'm sure there are people that would disagree with me, but for what Venice was and on our trip, it was a chance to relax, catch our breath. Now, I do consider walking the entire city as just another way of relaxing, because there's no set structure. We just went out and enjoyed the sights. And I'll let the video play with some nighttime footage of St. Mark's Square. We did have food nearby. We got recommendations from our friends back here in the States, and we went and tried a restaurant that they recommended, pasta, of course, and it was really good in my opinion. Christine wasn't a big fan, but that doesn't matter. So yeah, this is just a little bit more footage of St. Mark's Square adjacent to St. Mark's Basilica. I guess it's important to note, we didn't go inside the Basilica. We could have. We just made a conscious decision not to. There's a lot of churches all over the world, and I probably, if I go back, I would go into this one and check it out. But for this trip, we just enjoyed the square and hung out outside. We didn't go into the church. Hi, honey.
Hi.
Where are we?
We're still in Venice.
A little bit of change of plans, huh? We are on a water taxi. In the water taxi on the way to the train station so we can go to Roma. So that's it for Venice, guys. I know it's not a ton of footage and it's not a ton of different locations, but nonetheless, it gives you an idea. Now, the next stop after this was Rome, and I'll be working on that video shortly and posting that for everybody to see. This is, again, Venice, the third stop of 6 cities, 5 countries on our epic 2017 Europe trip. Thanks for watching, everybody.